What's going on, everybody? It's currently Thursday, July 25th, 2019, and it's a beautiful sunny day here in Pittsburgh. We are finally in the post-heat wave phase of the weather cycle. It's been extremely muggy for the last several days here. Everybody on the East Coast has been feeling the heat. I know I did. But, when your house is constantly cooking at a solid 65 degrees, 365 days a year, you sort of learn to appreciate warm weather when it comes around. And before you ask, yes, I do have control over my house thermometer, and I also have control over bearing responsibility for the electricity bill. Boss lady wants the temp at 65 degrees, it stays at 65 degrees. Anyway, I guess we should talk about some wrestling, right? I mean, that's what this show is about. So let's get going. I don't have a whole lot to discuss in terms of topics, but I do have some in-depth detail to go into, so this might run a little longer than usual, but we'll see. I want to read an article that was published over at Forbes on July 23rd. This is taken from an article written by Forbes contributor named Blake Ostreicher. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And the title of the article is called Seth Rollins is Dead Wrong About Why Fans Hate WWE. And Seth's been on the butt end of some real controversy over the last month, whether it's his Twitter beef with Will Ospreay back in late June, his recent comments about Jon Moxley and AEW, his comments about fans being jealous of the ongoing relationship with himself and Becky Lynch. The point being, Seth has come across very poorly in the media over the last several weeks. And let's discount for a minute whether or not Seth's media outbursts have been vindicated or not. The fact of the matter is that in his current position with the WWE right now, Seth is one of their key spokesmen for the company. He's supposed to be one of their top guys and representatives for the company. And with that top position comes a great deal of responsibility and leadership. And part of being an accountable leader is to take ownership of your work and your ability to help those that look up to you and are looking to be in your spot one day. When those future stars are in your shoes, how do they view your leadership? And how do they use those instructional tools that you left them in order to carry the company forward? Well, I can tell you for sure, the answer is not using social media platforms to blame the wrestling fans of being jealous or saying that fans are hateful and that they hate WWE because, quote, it's the cool thing to do. You can just hear how lame that sounds. But this is exactly what Seth has been doing over the last several weeks. This is from an interview Seth did with someone named Anthony Sola Heffinger over at Yahoo Sports on July 18th. And this is when he was asked about why fans hate WWE. Quote, "We're the New York Yankees. It's easy to hate the New England Patriots. We're those teams. We're the dynasty. It's easy to hate us, but we're still the most popular company in the world at what we do. We're so far beyond being a wrestling company that it's very easy to point the finger and hate on us. That's the cool thing to do. It makes perfect sense to me. It's how it's always been in sports and entertainment. You always hate the big guy. I'm not upset about it at all." Unquote. So, Ostreicher over at Forbes goes into a very detailed analysis of this statement. Quote, "WWE is more like the New York Knicks, the company that has all the tools to be the best franchise in the league, including a big market and mainstream appeal, but shaky management that has caused the organization to fail to live up to its potential. According to WWE's key performance indicators, business is down in many aspects, including Raw ratings, down 14%, SmackDown ratings, down 13%, live attendance, down 11%, and WWE Network, down 120,000 subscribers. Between WrestleMania 34 and 35, Raw lost a whopping 25% of its audience, while SmackDown lost roughly the same, not because WWE is the big guy, as Rollins stated, but because fans were simply expressing their dissatisfaction with the product. There's a reason why morale within WWE is so low, why the numbers of superstars looking to leave WWE for All Elite Wrestling would blow your mind, and why names like Dean Ambrose, Ty Dillinger, and Chris Jericho already did. Many superstars went out of WWE for the same reason that fans have stopped watching. The product isn't as good as it once was. There is no real excuse as to why WWE, which has all the money, creative brain power, and talent in the world, should be putting on anything other than a fantastic product on a consistent basis. Instead, WWE is often delivering a product that is underwhelming at best and downright terrible at worst, one that overlooks too many superstars, Asuka, Rusev, etc., focuses on ones it shouldn't be, Shane McMahon, Undertaker, etc., misguidedly uses short-term fixes, the use of part-timers or the wild card rule, for example, and frequently fails to produce entertaining programming. Unquote. Now Ostriker goes into a little bit more detail regarding Seth's interview, but there's a lot of detail in that one subsection alone to open up a whole can of worms. And I talked about this briefly in episode 1 when I talked about WWE making the decision to take the Universal title off of Seth. The shows were doing significantly worse numbers with Seth as the champion. When Brock was at the top of the ranks, ratings were not good, but they were far superior to everything post-WrestleMania. And yes, I understand the contributing factors you have to take into account. People didn't want to see Baron Corbin and Lacey Evans get put in the title picture. Traditionally, there's a brief down period for wrestling post-Mania until the build-up for SummerSlam starts. This is also an extension of the annual dwindling fan interest in pro wrestling. Here's something from Alfred Konuwa. He did a report back in May with Forbes, comparing the drop-off in viewership from the period of 2014 to May of 2018. And he found that the average drop-off in viewership for Raw over a 5-year span was at 32%. 32%. Think about that. In 2014, Raw averaged 4.143 million viewers. Fast forward to 2018, Raw averaged 2.823 million. And by May of 2019, Raw's averaging all-time low numbers of 2.158. Now yes, the Raw reunion show from this past Monday just did WWE's biggest viewership of the year, averaging a 3.09. This is Dave Meltzer's report according to The Observer. The previous high of 2.92 million came on the Raw after WrestleMania. Last night's Raw was the most watched episode of the show since April 23, 2018. It was up 26% from last week and 11% from the same week last year. So what does that tell you? Well, in the short term, it shows that some fans were interested in seeing a bunch of old-timers act like they were 20 years younger for one night. It shows people were interested for a quick nostalgia pop and to hear DX say suck it on live television. Does that 3.09 really mean anything in the grand scheme of things? Probably not. I highly doubt that viewership is going to carry over into next week. And again, all of this rationalizes Ostriker's report. Misguided short-term fixes for necessary long-term fixes. Anyway, I'm digressing from the Seth Rollins situation. So he goes on a completely irrational tangent about fans hating on WWE and hating on his relationship with Becky, and all of that is really juvenile and ridiculous. But now he's making comments on Jon Moxley's move to AEW. This is a tweet from a SummerSlam conference call with John Pollock. Quote, "I was surprised by it. I knew Ambrose needed time away from WWE. Now he's competition and trying to take dinner off of my table, and good on him." Unquote. First off, The comment is completely absurd. WWE has never been more financially stable in its entire history as a company than they are right now. The money they're going to be getting when they move over to Fox in October, AEW is not a grave threat to WWE's business success anytime in the near future, TV deal or no TV deal. But again, it's not enough for Seth to just wish Moxley the best of success with New Japan and AEW. No, he's got to twist the knife and call out Moxley for being competition. Like he's now an enemy of the business. Because Moxley's competition to the WWE. And by the way, when did competition have such a negative connotation in the eyes of the people working in the wrestling business? Shouldn't Moxley be viewed as a good thing for Seth? Or Moxley leaving? I mean, God forbid maybe it actually pushes Seth to work harder. God forbid it pushes him to be a better pro wrestler. Because I'll tell you one thing for sure. It's pushed Jon Moxley to work harder and be better. Moxley's been having great showings since leaving WWE back in April. Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez talked about this on Wrestling Observer on Monday. And Brian's been very vocal about the abysmal quality of Dean Ambrose's matches when he was the champion in WWE. I mean, go back to that period post-Mania 32 in 2016. After they fed Ambrose to Lesnar at Mania and they put the world title on him, Ambrose actually got worse in the ring. He was slower, he was unmotivated, he looked physically ill. Now, I'm not even trying to be facetious about this. Go back and watch Ambrose's matches in 2016 post-Mania, especially when he was the SmackDown champion. He did not look good, physically or emotionally. And granted, he got himself in great shape over the last year, but there was a period of time a few years ago where Ambrose looked very frail and very sickly. Fast forward to 2019, he gets out of WWE, he's healthier, he's happier, and he's performing at levels way beyond anything he ever did in WWE. So what does this all really boil down to? Well, I think the answer is quite simple. I don't think Seth is out of touch with reality. I think Seth is well aware of the current situation in WWE right now. And I think Seth is attempting to do damage control and paint a positive image for the company as a cover-up for the fact that morale in the company is at an all-time low. And I think a lot of Seth's knee-jerk social media outbursts have really hurt his character, it's hurting his colleagues, and it's hurting the company. So yes, there is a problem in WWE right now. And one of the many numerous problems right now is Seth Rollins himself. He's not being a good company representative, he's not being a role model, he's not handling himself well in the media, and he's exposing the business by continuing to let the smallest of small details get under his skin. And the truth of the matter is this. You can either bite the bullet and take ownership when things are going poorly for you, and you make the best out of your current situation, or you crumble under the pressure and allow your emotions to cloud your better judgment. And the only thing I've seen out of Seth over the last month is failure after failure after failure after failure to be a true frontrunner for the WWE. I hope he wises up soon. I hope someone sits down with him and has a conversation about this. Because I think someone needs to. Someone needs to give him a reality check. I really hope he wises up, because it'd be a shame to see fans completely resent him as a performer purely because Seth decided that he would rather blame the fans for the company's problems rather than blame himself and the company for its own problems. And speaking of blaming the fans for company problems, Seth's not the only one that I'm linking to in this equation. Because much like Seth's hasty decisions to take to social media and blame fans for stuff, Alexa Bliss has a very similar problem. Sitting there after Raw and calling out fans on Twitter for being disrespectful. And how were said fans being disrespectful, you ask? Well, they simply turned on a women's match on Raw. Yes, wrestling fans who bought tickets to see quality wrestling turned on a women's wrestling match because the women's wrestling match not only lasted for 25 excruciating minutes through several commercial breaks, but also consisted of multiple series of long, boring rest holds and no heat. So, the fans turn on a gratuitously long, boring match, starting every chant in the book to entertain themselves, paid no attention to a match that determined Becky's opponent for the women's title at SummerSlam. Cold? Yes. Harsh? Yes. Disrespectful? I take issue with that. Disrespectful. I want you all to think about that word disrespectful and take note of the arrogance that's associated with that term. This isn't Alexa complaining about the fans being obnoxious or annoying. She's calling them disrespectful. Man, you hear the tone in that word? There's like that real conceited entitlement quality in the word disrespectful. Like you owe it to us to be courteous, whether or not you think the wrestling is good. And listen, I'll say this. I understand Alexa's frustration. Does it suck being on live television with thousands of fans chanting, "This is awful" at you? Does it suck to go through rigorous training and harsh travel only to show up to work, destroy your body for people's sadistic entertainment, and then have to hear those fans call what you're doing boring and awful? I'd imagine it's not pleasant. I would imagine it might feel really degrading as a performer. But there's a right way and a wrong way to handle a situation like that. And Alexa Bliss impetuously going to Twitter and calling out paying customers, that is not the right way to handle it. Sorry, Alexa, but this isn't how the business world works. Whether you like it or not, there's a reason that Harry Gordon Selfridge coined the term, "the customer is always right." And there's a reason that 100 years later, that term still holds water when it comes to establishing a good rapport with customers and employees. I know this. I work in retail. I know how important it is to maintain good relationships with your customers. Because what happens when you piss off your paying customers? Oh, newsflash, they stop giving you service. And then your business suffers. And more significantly, you suffer. This is not breaking news. This is not a revolutionary concept in the real world. And like I said, Alexa, whether you think the fans' chants are justified or not, whether you think that they're disrespectful or not, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Another wise man I know who runs a podcast coined the phrase, "Facts don't care about your feelings." And to hit you with some hard truth, Alexa, those fans that you're criticizing and calling disrespectful on social media, they're the ones paying the money for the ticket. They're the ones buying your merchandise. They're the ones that pay your paycheck. And again, sorry, Alexa, I don't mean to keep on, driving a hammer down on your head here, but all of this stuff that I'm saying here is the reality of the profession that you decided to willingly take up. Nobody demanded that you be a professional wrestler. Nobody held a gun to your head and told you that you were going to be unwillingly spending the rest of your life physically beating up your body for people's entertainment. You decided that. And I thank you very much for your motivation to do so in order to entertain me. I'm actually a decent fan of yours. And the reality of the situation is that as much as you feel entitled to vent your frustrations out on social media about wrestling fans being rude during your match, those very same fans are just as entitled to spreading their frustrations on social media as you are. And if you can't handle the criticism, if you can't handle the emotional toll, then maybe you're in the wrong profession. Take pride in what you do. Don't get caught up by a bunch of disgruntled fans. All they're doing is begging for attention. And by you taking to Twitter and calling attention to those disgruntled fans, all you're doing is feeding into their egos. You know your capabilities, and you know your flaws. Use what happened last Monday as a learning tool to get better as a performer instead of using it as a lousy defense mechanism to safeguard the company. Because the fact of the matter is that the company was responsible for that fiasco of a segment taking place. The company was responsible for booking and agenting a 25-minute snooze fest of a women's match. If I paid $30 or whatever it is for a ticket and had to watch a damn near 30-minute debacle of a wrestling match, men's match or women's match, you bet I'm not going to be too satisfied. And, you know, I don't want to sit here and play the gender card or sex card if you prefer the biological terminology. But there was something really telling about the outburst over that women's four-way that got me thinking about something. You know, I just think back to last year around this time. And I had to constantly hear Stephanie McMahon come out on Raw each week and talk about the women's revolution. That women are evolving in sports. In 2018, by the way, as opposed to, I don't know, the 1960s. That the women in WWE deserve equality and blah, blah, blah. So what did WWE do? They started booking the women in Hell in a Cell matches, in Elimination Chamber matches, and Money in the Bank matches. They started giving women the chance to main event pay-per-views. Then they gave the women their own standalone pay-per-view. Pretty soon, fast forward to 2019, for the first time in WWE history, the women are the headline main event match at WrestleMania. They gave the women a platform to really showcase that they deserve the same equality of opportunity as men. And here we are in the aftermath of all of those headlines. And you've still got female wrestlers like Alexa Bliss claiming that the fans are disrespectful on social media. It's like I said with the entitlement thing earlier. And I'm not saying that this is the intent of Alexis's tweet. But do you understand how people can interpret it as such? That Alexa's just pulling the gender sex card here? Like, the fans owe it to Alexa Bliss and the rest of the female wrestlers to be respectful of a boring 25-minute match because of the fact that they're women? Sorry, Alexa. You can't have it both ways. You want equality of opportunity in this business? That's great. You deserve that. You deserve the opportunity to headline pay-per-views. You deserve the opportunity to have your own standalone pay-per-view. But when you start demanding equality of outcome, that's an entirely different animal. Because now you're demanding the same treatment and response for women's matches in relation to the men's matches. And if that's what you want as a female performer in WWE, fine. Then you should learn to cope with the heckling. Because I've heard plenty of men's matches get hijacked from fans in my lifetime. And I can count on one hand the amount of times that those guys took to social media to complain that the fans were being disrespectful. And you can damn sure guarantee that none of them pulled the gender card on anyone. So, again, I have no proof that the intent of Alexis's tweet was to pull the gender card. I reserve the right to judge until I can confirm otherwise. But based on the reactionary tone in the tweet, I can see why people might presume the gender card. And to tell you the truth, that women's four-way from last week really should tell you something about the state of women's wrestling in 2019. Like I said a minute ago, at this point last year, there was a big buzz going in this company for women's wrestling. People were genuinely excited to see the women in WWE. People were stoked to see the women get their own pay-per-view. Ronda Rousey was one of the biggest draws and superstars in 2018. Becky Lynch was their top babyface post-SummerSlam. Now you fast forward just under a year later. Just really think about that for a sec. We are not even a full year removed from the Evolution pay-per-view. And there is no buzz for the women's wrestling in this company. It went from something that could have garnered a whole new level of publicity for the company and ultimately turn into a niche product that people could care less about a year after the fact. Here's a 2014-2015 report from Chris Harrington over at Indeed Wrestling. This is the most recent report that I've seen in terms of breakdown in demographic viewership, but this was posted during an FAQ on WWE.com. Covering the period of November 2014 to September 2015, WWE broke out their audience as such: 63% male, 37% female. 38% of the male demographic at ages 50 plus, and 21% ages 35 to 49. 23% of the female demographic at ages 18 to 34, and 18% ages 2 to 17. Now, obviously, these numbers are different in 2019, perhaps drastically different. I don't have the demographic breakdown of 2019 in front of me, and I have not seen any reports out there about this at all. The point I'm making is this: pro wrestling has been, and probably for the foreseeable future, always will be a primarily male-dominated form of entertainment. And as much as fans spread their concerns about women's wrestling on social media or clench to see women get a fair shake-up in the business, the fact of the matter is the numbers indicate that women don't draw in WWE like the men do. And the women especially aren't drawing in 2019, what with how poorly they followed up with the main event of WrestleMania this year. This whole thing is really bizarre to me. WWE spent so much time giving the women a platform last year, and ever since the fallout to Mania, it's like all that women's revolution crap never happened. Ronda's gone, Sasha's gone, Becky's momentum has been grinded to a halt, Charlotte's not doing anything, Asuka's not doing anything, Bayley's not drawing as a champion. They made the women's tag division a complete joke by putting the belts on Peyton Royce and Billie Kay. I mean, morale for women's wrestling in WWE is ridiculously low right now. They haven't even publicized whether or not they're even bothering with the Evolution pay-per-view again. Who knows if that's even going to be a thing this year? Even the women's division in NXT isn't garnering much interest. I mean, the Io Shirai heel turn is noteworthy, and we haven't seen where it's going to go, but I haven't been particularly interested with what the women have been doing in NXT for a while now. Shane is awesome, but she's beaten everyone. They're probably going to have Mia Yim be the one to beat her for the belt in Toronto, but Mia's not nearly over enough as a babyface challenger to justify a title change. Not with how much investment they plunked into Shayna as the heel champion. They've completely steamrolled over Bianca Belair after beating her to Shayna and Mia several times. She's not nearly as over as she was a year ago. Who else is there? Kairi Sane's up on the main roster doing crossword puzzles with Asuka. I don't get it. With all the attention WWE was putting on women's wrestling a year ago, it's hard to believe that under a year later, they've completely pissed away all that momentum. Then again, maybe it's not hard to believe. Because they've done a lot of stuff in the last year that would just make your head spin. Alright, I think I've vented enough about WWE for the week. Let's talk about some of the results from the New Japan G1. I'm caught up all the way to Night 7, and I know that Night 8 kicks off on Wednesday, July 24th at the Hiroshima Sun Plaza Hall with the B Block. I'll be watching that a little later this week. But I briefly ran down my thoughts on Nights 1 through 4 in Episode 1 last week. So now I'm going to quickly run down Nights 5 through 7, starting with the A Block matches from the Korakuen Hall on Thursday, July 18th. Kenta versus Lance Archer was a very enjoyable match with a great story. Archer's a phenomenal monster heel, and Kenta is a phenomenal babyface in peril. I was surprised to see Kenta get the submission win, but they're really going all in with Kenta right now. I can't confirm for sure because we haven't seen Okada versus Kenta yet in the A Block, but if I had to guess, I presume the idea is that they're building up to Kenta to get a big surprise win over Okada. And if that's the case, it's a good call to keep him undefeated in the tournament. Same goes with Okada. Evil and Sonata was excellent. Evil won with the Everything is Evil. One of my favorite matches in the tournament so far. I like the story of having two partners go in there and work a style of being evenly matched so you could kind of tell it could go either way. They were cognizant of each other's moves. They kept things simple at the beginning, and they really milked the build-up to the finish. I also particularly like the story of Kevin Kelly and Rocky Romero on commentary here, because they were talking about how Sonata really needs this win, because as great of a wrestler as he is, the one thing that Sonata's been missing as a singles performer is that defining victory to put him on the map with some of the top guys in New Japan. So you were really edging on your seat to have Sonata, or to see Sonata win this match. So when Evil won at the end, they left a little bit of suspense as to how Sonata bounces back from this loss. And it leaves the open-ended question of, when does Sonata get that big win in New Japan that he so desperately needs? Does he get a win over Okada in the coming weeks? Or are they saving something for 2020? So there's a cool little story that's going on there. Okada beat Bad Luck Fale in a very uneventful contest. Okada won with a roll-up. Nothing else to really note about it. Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Zack Sabre Jr. was incredibly innovative. Completely unlike any Tanahashi match I've ever seen before. Basically, the story was, Zack kept on finding ways to get Tanahashi trapped in submission holds, and just when you thought that Zack was going to pull out the big upset over Tanahashi and get him to tap out to the triangle choke, Tanahashi pulled the old Kurt Angle Undertaker spot and folded up Zack to get the surprise pin. And they got a real interesting story going on with Zack right now. He was 0-3 heading into this match. He did pick up a countout win over Fale on night 7, but he's still trailing way behind in the bracket so far. And I've been really intrigued with the tear-down build-up story they've got going on with Zack, and I'm really interested to see how they book him as we approach the halfway point of the tournament. And the main event of night 5 was Kota Ibushi and Will Ospreay. I know it's been a toss-up between this match and the Okada-Ospreay match from night 7 over which was better. I think Dave Meltzer was right when he was talking about this on Observer Radio. As a match, Okada and Ospreay was probably the better worked match. But as a story, Ibushi and Ospreay was way more effective. And I'll get into the Okada-Ospreay match in a minute, but I personally got more satisfaction out of the Ibushi-Ospreay match here. Okada and Ospreay just didn't have the emotional drama like this. I love the story of Ibushi working over Ospreay's injured neck. There were a couple scary and borderline unwarranted bumps in this match, but I did appreciate that it didn't turn into an Ibushi-Naito fiasco where they were just dropping each other on their heads and purposefully trying to kill each other. I like the reverse tree of woe spot in the corner, playing off the story of their match back at Wrestle Kingdom 13. And I was okay with the finish, too. I was shocked to see Ibushi go over, especially since this match preceded the Ospreay-Okada match, and you think that Ospreay would probably need the win to gain a little more momentum heading into the Okada match. But at the end of the day, Ibushi was 0-2 heading into this one, so he kind of desperately needed a win as well. Regardless, this is my favorite match of the tournament so far. I enjoyed it more than Okada-Ospreay from night 7, and yes, controversial opinion here, but I did enjoy it more than Ishii-Moxley from night 6. As great as both of those matches were, and I'll get into them a bit more in a sec here, this one had more emotional drama and historical context, and I think it delivered on all cylinders. It's going to be very difficult to top this match for me during the remainder of the tournament. I think Okada and Kenta has the potential to reach that caliber of Ospreay and Ibushi, but it's a pretty big wave to ride. So then we fast forward to the B block on night 6 at Korakuen Hall. Shingo Takagi defeated Taichi. It was good for what it was. Shingo's very good. Taichi doesn't really do it for me. I don't really get the character, and I've never really been impressed with anything I've ever seen out of his matches. Jeff Cobb had his best match of the tournament with Juice Robinson. Jeff got the win with Tour of the Islands. It was the right call. Cobb really needed the win in the tournament here, and considering that he's going to be facing Jay White next, it was good to give him a win here. I don't foresee Jeff Cobb beating Jay White. it could happen, but Jay's falling really behind in the tournament, so he desperately needs a win too. Speaking of such, Toru Yano defeated Jay White with a quick roll-up. Again, was what it was. There's an overly comedic element to hearing Kelly and Rocky go ballistic over seeing Jay White continually do job after job after job in this tournament. I know I was very critical about the Yano-Naito match from Night 2, and I still maintain that having Naito get chastened in short order from a comedy goofball like Toru Yano is incredibly dumb. At least with the story that they're telling with Jay White right now, it makes sense that White would lose to Yano in fairly humiliating fashion in 3 minutes. I said last week that Jay White's got a lot of potential, although I still think there's an element missing to his character that makes him stand out as a top-level performer. He's a good heel, but a lot of his booking feels like it stems from that post-evolution Randy Orton syndrome, where it's like they really want him to be a main eventer, and they're determined to get him there by all accounts, but it all just feels really forced. They're doing a similar story with Jay as they are with Zack, where they're having Jay do a bunch of jobs early on, most likely to start building him up in the second half of the tournament. It's kind of weird that they're essentially doing the same exact story with two guys on opposing blocks, what with having them lose their first 3 matches of the tournament, but I think they can get some mileage out of tearing Jay down to build him back up here. Hiroki Goto and Tetsuya Naito was fine, but not great. Naito got the win with Destino, which was absolutely the right decision. One thing Dave talked about on Observer Radio is that Hiroki Goto is a very good wrestler, but he's really lacking in charisma as a performer. And part of the problem with that is that it presents a situation where Goto is only going to be as good as the dance partners he shares the ring with. And he's got to be in there with the right opponents to help elevate his profile. And as good as Naito can be when he wants to, he really just wasn't giving Goto much to work with here. Which again, gives me a lot of hope for Jay White in the future, because Jay was actually able to get an exceptional match out of Goto from Night 2. Plus, that match main evented the show. So there was a lot of extra pressure on those guys to really send the fans home happy. This one, on the other hand, never really got out of second gear. But the match everyone's been talking about was this Tomohiro Ishii and Jon Moxley main event. And I thought this was every bit as awesome as people were hyping it up to be. And normally I'm the one that tends to sour on the majority opinion, especially when everyone's on the bandwagon. It's like how everyone was saying Ishii and Cobb was out of this world, and I ended up thinking that it was boring and dull. But no, people were absolutely right about this Ishii-Moxley match. This is that kind of grungy, hostile fight that I just never got out of the Cobb-Ishii match. The crowd brawling was awesome. The standoffs were awesome. The Ishii splash through the table was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in New Japan. I like the bulldog-style headbutts toward the end. This is easily Moxley's best match in New Japan so far, and this is also probably my favorite Ishii match I've seen since I started watching New Japan. And let me say this real quick, because I think it's important. I know a lot of people are sleeping on Ishii in this tournament. I don't think most people who closely follow this product and Gato's booking presume that Ishii is winning this year's G1. But I'll tell you, I've been a big fan of Ishii for a long time, and I have never seen him as extremely hot as he is right now. Even if it's only in the short term, yeah, kind of like what they did with Jay White beating Tanahashi for the IWGP title this year, I think it would be an incredibly missed opportunity to not give Ishii a brief run with the belt in the near future. Can you imagine the reaction if people saw Okada versus Ishii for the IWGP title? I think they could draw a lot of money and fan interest with that match. And if it's not in the planned books anytime soon, it needs to be. Because Ishii has been absolutely fantastic in this tournament, and he's earned himself at least a chance to compete for the world title. And then we had Night 7 at the Korakuen Hall, the final evening of matches in Tokyo before they shift venue locations. Zack Sabre Jr. beat Bad Luck Fale by countout. The ending idea to the match was awesome. What was Sabre and Fale fighting into the crowd, and Sabre having to sprint down to beat the 20 count so that he could win. And I love the facial reaction with Zack afterwards when he won. I mean, you have never seen a man so happy to win a match via countout. Hiroshi Tanahashi beat Lance Archer with a victory roll. Another good match with a simplistic story of Archer being a ruthless heel and Tanahashi having to play the babyface in peril for a lot of it. That is now 2 consecutive losses for Archer in back-to-back matches, so I can only presume that Archer is going to be spending the rest of the tournament destroying guys and racking up points like nobody's business. And why is that? Because everybody dies. And that is a reading from the gospel according to Lance Archer. Kenta defeated Evil with the GTS in a very good contest. Truth be told, looking back, I don't remember a whole lot of detail about this match. I do remember the crowd brawling being a little excessive. I think the outside ring fighting works on occasion with the right guys, but seeing Kenta and Evil try to do spots in the crowd just didn't really work for me. This one would have been best suited just taking place in the ring. Still a very good match, though, from what I remember. Kota Ibushi beat Sonata with the Kamagoye. This match was a lot like Kenta Evil. It was good. I don't think it ever reached anything out of second gear. And it was clearly outshined by both of their matches from the previous night, which I thought were way better than this. And in the main event, Kazuchika Okada defeated Will Ospreay with the Rainmaker in what everyone is saying is, if not a Match of the Year candidate, the Match of the Year candidate. And I watched both the Ospreay-Ibushi match and the Ospreay-Okada match a second time just to get a fresh perspective, see if I'd maybe change my mind about which I thought was better. I still maintain that Ibushi-Ospreay was the better match. Again, maybe not as far as ring work goes, but as a story, the Ibushi-Ospreay match, it just exceeded this. I still like this one a lot, though. Easily the best Okada match I've seen this year. I was not a big fan of the excessive uses of the Rainmaker in this one. I mean, what did Okada do? Like 4 or 5 Rainmakers in the last minute and a half here? Like, that was a bit much for me. There's a reason that finishers should be protected in pro wrestling, and it's so that you can avoid doing stuff like this, where you're hitting your finisher several times in a row to keep your opponent down for a 3 count. I look at it this way. If you have to resort to hitting your finish a bunch of times because your opponent either kicks out or reverses it into something else, you need a new finisher because your current one ain't working. Still, an excellent match, told a very good story. I think Okada going over was the right call here. Again, you can have Ospreay beat Okada at a later date. I think the bigger intrigue right now is the Kenta-Okada match, and if Kenta's going to end up getting the shocking win over Okada, which I see happening at this point, you need to keep the champ protected heading into that match. All right, I think I've talked enough for the week. We're making progress with the long periods of constant talking, but it's still a battle for me. But you know what they say, practice makes perfect, friends. Just like I was taught to sing in elementary school. And back when wrestling was actually the cool thing to talk about in school. Anyway, I'm out of here. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Make sure you give this video a like, leave a comment or 2 down below so I can get your feedback. And most importantly, make sure you hit that subscribe button, click on that notification bell so you can keep posted with the 5 Starr Wrestling Report. Videos are posted every Monday morning. Until next week, take care, everyone.